The top story on ABC News Breakfast this morning, Greece's finance minister says the country has avoided a nightmare scenario in securing a massive bailout. After more than 12 hours of talks, the Eurozone, the region's central bank and the IMF all reached an agreement to give Greece an extra $170 billion.
European stock markets have responded cautiously to the deal amid doubts about Greece's ability to improve its economic situation. Our Europe correspondent Philip Williams joins us now from London. Good morning, Phil. Just take us through the main elements of this deal that was hammered out over these marathon talks.
Well, the main elements are really much as we'd been told beforehand. The changes to what we had been told beforehand are really around the edges, where the private bondholders had to take a bit more pain than they had expected. They have apparently agreed to that. There's also going to be a reduced interest rate paid to them. And also the European Central Bank is not going to they're not going to take as much profit from the Greek bonds that they've already accumulated. But what it meant was that they could finally get this deal through, and it was nearly 14 hours. By the way, last time I spoke to you, this time yesterday, there were 4 hours, and there was another almost 10 hours to go of negotiations. But what they've come up with is an arrangement whereby 170 billion will be made available to Greece. There'll be various swaps of debt for bonds, which will, of course, have a lower face value, a lower value ultimately for the private bond holders. But it basically underpins the Greek economy for the time being. Now, there are many, many opinions about whether this is the end of it or the beginning of the end of it. Some people say they've just thrown good money after bad. We'll be back with Mark III before we know it. But for the moment, at least, the Greek government and all the Eurozone governments that are involved in this have said, basically sighed an enormous sigh of relief and said, you know, we've finally got an arrangement that may just work. And of course, many downside risks, as Christine Lagarde from the IMF said, ahead. And also, this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of the protection of the rest of the Eurozone. Here's a little of what David Cameron said about that.
What I'd say is that Greece has made its choice, and we now have to focus on the next step, which is constructing a firewall that is large enough to prevent contagion within the Eurozone. Britain is outside the Eurozone. We're not going to join the Eurozone, and we have the advantage outside the Eurozone of being able to accompany the tough fiscal measures that are necessary when you have a deficit like ours, when you have a debt like ours. You have to make some reductions in public spending. You have to control public spending properly, but at the same time, you can accompany that with a looser monetary policy.
European leaders have welcomed this bailout package, Phil, but on the streets of Greece, is it a different story?
It is a different story because these are the people that feel it very much every day, and these are the people that know that in 2 years' time there'll be another 150,000 public servants without a job, that they know that their pay is about to be cut, that their pensions are about to be cut, that their working conditions are about to be eroded. It's all aimed, supposedly, at making them more competitive and able to then trade their way out of this problem. That's the big problem. No one sees where this growth, this mysterious growth, is going to come from in such a recessionary spiral. And they've been in for five consecutive years in recession, and they've still got this enormous pressure of more austerity to come. So how do they get out of it? That's the big question. And most ordinary Greeks are tired of it. They're sick of it. They're scared. Many of the younger Greeks are looking to get out of the country, looking for new opportunities. Of course, very many Australian Greek connections, and I've no doubt at all that it's already started. An exodus of young Greeks, particularly those that have the ability to go to Australia, have their family connections there, to find work in Australia in much greener pastures. So Greece is going to lose a lot of talented people over the next couple of years. And those that stay know that they're going to have a very tough time, that getting a job, that keeping a job is going to be more difficult, and that if you don't have a job, being unemployed and being without support is going to be more difficult too. So they're in for a tough ride. And even by the most positive projections, by 2020, they'll still have a debt ratio of 120% to GDP, and that's a very high debt load. that's even after all of this pain. So they're in for a very, very long haul, and it's going to be a nasty one for very many Greeks.
Phil Williams, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.